Hey, what's up everybody? Today I'm making this slow cooked beef chili. I cooked it on my stovetop and it is just the most amazing beef chili ever. So let's go. So first I am going to brown or get my meat started cooking. So I have about 2 pounds of ground beef and I'm just going to place that in my Dutch oven. Don't need to add any oil or anything extra. And I'm just going to break it apart a little bit. It's going to break apart more on its own. And we're also just going to chop it up a little bit later. But I like to kind of like give it a little head start. So I'm just going to roughly move my spoon all around it and kind of just break it up into large-ish kind of pieces. Then I'm going to put my lid on, let it cook for about 10 minutes or so on medium heat to draw out some of that extra liquid. So in the meantime, this is just a shot of all of the canned ingredients I'm going to be using. I'm also using fresh veggies as well, but I'll go into that detail in a little bit. So it's been about 10 minutes and this is what the ground beef is looking like. Very appetizing, I know. Now I'm just gonna break it up and chop it up a little bit more because it is easier to do so at this point, as you see, because a lot of that extra liquid is out of the ground beef and it's not as compact and not as tightly held or congealed together. So anyway, I'm gonna drain off a lot of that liquid. I'm gonna leave a couple tablespoons or so in there, but I like to just drain off all of this excess liquid in most cases when I'm using ground beef, because you really don't need that in there and you can just add more flavors yourself. All right, so again, some people like to leave it in there. It's totally fine. It's really just whatever your preference is. So I like to do that, and now you'll see there's still a little bit of that liquid left in there, which is fine. And so now I'm just gonna kind of chop the meat up a little bit more, and this is where I'm really just gonna go into it and really get my spoon in there and really kind of like get it finely minced up however I like it. So now I'm just going to start off on the base to this chili. So I'm starting off with a tablespoon or so of tomato paste. And I love the tomato paste just because it really just helps to start and deepen the tomatoey flavor from the canned tomatoes we're going to be adding in a little bit later. Then I like to go in with a tablespoon or so of that Better Than Bouillon beef base. And that also just really gets the nice beefy flavor really started. And I personally like to do that because I'm going to add a little bit of water later on in the dish. And it'll really just help to brighten that beef flavor up and bring it more to the forefront. So these are the fresh veggies I mentioned. I have about 2 medium onions diced up, red bell pepper, and I believe 2 green bell peppers. Again, all diced up. And I like to go in with most of the veggies at this point, just so they can really cook and sweat into the actual chili and really get nice and tender. But I also like to leave just maybe 25% of the veggies until like the last 30 minutes or so of the cooking time, just so they can be a little bit more fresh in the final dish. Again, that's just a preference. You can definitely go into all of the veggies at this time. So now after about 5 or so minutes, I'm going to go in with a little bit of salt. Don't really go too heavy with the salt. You can always add in more salt at the end, but you definitely cannot take it out, and trust me on that. So I'm just going to move all of the mixture to the sides, kind of create like a little hole in the middle. I'm going to go in with some minced garlic, and I'm going to let that kind of like sizzle and cook a little bit while I'm adding in the other seasonings that you see on the screen. Now, for y'all other home cooks out there, definitely I kind of like am eyeballing a lot of this stuff, and you'll see me throughout the cooking process add in a little bit more seasonings here and there, but ultimately those are kind of like the final amounts of the ingredients or the spices that I used in the dish. But again, this is all customizable and you can really tailor it to suit your needs. So after adding all of the spices, I'm going to just put my lid on, let it cook for a couple of minutes or so, and then I'm going to add in some red wine. Not too much, only about a half a cup of red wine in this. I used a Cabernet Sauvignon. You can use any other type of like dry red wine. You don't really want to use any type of like sangria or something really fruity and really sweet. It's just not going to work well for this dish. But after a couple of minutes or so, I'm just going to let that red wine kind of simmer off and let the alcohol cook off. And you'll see when I move my spoon throughout there that there was no more red wine left. So now it's time to go in with the tomatoes. So I have 2 28-ounce cans of tomatoes. I use the crushed canned tomatoes as well as like the small petite, I think they're called diced tomatoes. And I just like the texture that they really provide. But you can really just use plain old tomato sauce, y'all, I promise you. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going in with some more of those seasonings. I'm really just eyeballing a lot of this stuff, as I said. And yeah, put whatever seasonings you want in there, but I like to use cumin and chili powder and Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit garlic powder, a little bit onion powder. Those are like the seasonings that I really like to use in this, as well as Italian seasoning. So then I went in with my beans. I make sure I drain the beans, ran them under some cold water to make sure that none of that slimy liquid was still in the beans. And that's just another personal preference, because I just don't need all of that stuff in there. That the liquid that the beans come in is a little iffy to me. I'm not really too sure about it. So I like to drain all the liquid out, let it kind of sit for a little bit, and to make sure that all of that liquid has really just come out of those beans. So now I mixed everything all up together. I like to do a little taste test here before I really do the bulk of my cooking, just to make sure that we're at a good place before we really put the lid on and kind of like set it and forget it for a while. So again, I'm just going in with the last little final touches of my seasonings. As you'll notice, I'm not really adding any salt right here, because I did add some soy sauce. The Worcestershire sauce also has a little bit of salt in it, as well as that BTB, the Better Than Bouillon beef base, also has some salt in it as well. So to really kind of give you like a nice beefy broth kind of vibe. Finally, just mixing everything all up together. Then I'm gonna put the lid on, let it cook for about hour and a half on medium heat, or you could do even like 2 hours on simmer, like a low heat. Or you can even put it in your crock pot or your pressure cooker for maybe, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or so on high. Do whatever you want to do, y'all, but you really want to make sure that you're cooking this for a while so the meat can get nice and tender, and so the beans and so all of the flavors are really married together. And that is really how I like to eat my chili. Y'all, we are pretty much done right here. So if you're like me, you like to serve your chili with like cornbread or sour cream and cheese, some jalapeno peppers. You can do all of that with this right here, y'all. This is totally customizable. I actually made this for my sister and bro-in-law, and they said, my bro said that he put some Fritos in it. So, you know, go crazy with it. Do what you want to do with it, y'all. But I really hope you enjoyed the recipe. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of it. And y'all, I will see you all in the next video. Later.
It's down white.